What's up, party people? This is the Hitech podcast, brought to you by Harness Tech, which is the business behind William and Joshua, your hosts of this podcast.
I thought you were going to pause there and just be like, the business behind William. Like, it's back here. It's literally located behind Will.
Right there.
Yeah.
No, it actually is right here. The Harness Tech is everything in front of me. Folks, we are excited to have you back here for another episode of the Hitech podcast because, as always, while we're brought to you by Harness Tech, we are here to just be a space for me and Josh to talk about whatever comes to mind, right? So we had a plan for what this episode would have been. That got moved around. Life happens. That's great. And this episode is going to be something that we're both quite passionate about discussing. So until we get there, make sure you head over to our social media platforms and connect with us, share with us, like us, comment, all those good things, right? We are the Hitech Podcast. You can find us almost everywhere as at Hitech Podcast. You'll see that on screen if you're watching, or at Hitech Pod. I think that's like Instagram is at Hitech Pod. I don't know. Don't really care. You can get there. You'll
find it. It's like a treasure hunt. You type it in both of those and see what happens.
Most importantly, though, Spotify or YouTube, if you could subscribe to us in those two places and like our material in those spaces, that's going to help us reach more people. Those are the best platforms to help us, potentially monetize. We're not there, but that's what it would take is more followers in those spaces. And of course, more people engaging with the podcast. So make sure to share and like and subscribe, all those good things. Cool. If you would like to participate in the Hitech Podcast, if you have ideas, if you have sponsors, if you have things we should be trying to do, if you want to rebut one of the episodes that we've previously put out there or this episode, feel free to slide into our inbox at hitechpod.us. That is our email address. You can reach us pretty much anytime, anywhere. And our website is hitechpod.us. That has all of our episode pages on it. Information about our affiliates, information about Notion. If you don't know that we love Notion, you should know that we love Notion. The podcast and everything else is built on it.
Let's talk about that for just one hot second. Notion AI got a face. This episode's going to be coming out in a little bit. So this happened like a little bit by the time this episode releases. But let's just talk for a hot second how full circle we've come. Clippy used to be a thing we took for granted. It used to be a thing we were like, silly Clippy in Microsoft. Who needs it? And now it's back. And I think it's hilarious. Notion AI got a face. And they literally posted on Twitter like a week or two ago where they were like, Clippy walked so Notion AI could run. And they're like actually interviewing the guy who like made Clippy. I just think it's hilarious. But like it's super funny. It's I've got a little face now in Notion. It's a great time to get into Notion if you ever want to. I know like we talk about Notion all the time, and yes, we're affiliates and all that fun stuff, but like it's pretty baller. Notion AI can like read PDFs now and stuff. Like anyway, sorry. This is my little spiel. Because I just think it keeps getting better. They keep doing cooler and cooler things.
It's your small soapbox. We're gonna get to a bigger soapbox momentarily, but it's your small soapbox.
Yeah, 100% for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's all the regular spiely kind of stuff. Now, if you're here with us, we're doing something we haven't done in quite some time. We're doing a roastery. This episode is going to be us letting loose on something that we care about.
Yeah, loosening the ties that Will and I always wear. You know, that's why I'm in a beige room. I thought for this topic I needed to be in a beige room. You know, that was kind of my vibe.
with a spinny chair and a kitchenette behind you, you know.
Yes, and a Chick-fil-A cup somewhere in the back. I forgot to take it off the end table before I switched.
False advertising. It's all right.
Yeah.
Now I want Chick-fil-A. Why'd you do that to me? Anyway,
it was great.
One of the things that we're going to get to as a positive is some ideas on what we can do to stop this. But the topic for today is wasteful tech, wasting tech, throwing tech out, making too much tech, making millions of products that never get touched, used, end up in landfills. Josh got me started while we were talking about some prep tonight, and I got going, and I was like, you should just hit record, because if I keep going on this subject, without recording it is going to be a waste of the conversation. I believe that the technology and the technology practices we're dealing with in 2024 are not sustainable. I don't think it's a good use of resources. And if we're only going to try and continue to make tech better and the tech more advanced, right? Like chips are going to get smaller, devices are going to get less physical, probably more holograms. Who knows? Who knows what the future is? But if we are wasting so many materials now that are going in these phones that end up in landfills, those are materials that we won't, it's going to take too long to recycle them effectively to make them useful for future purposes. Like when I see a flat screen television on the side of the road that's in like somebody's trash can, I'm like, oh my gosh, what's in that? The chips, the screen, the plastics, all the materials, these are things that we could use. And frankly, big tech companies, Lenovo and Sony and Samsung, Apple and Google, I mean, they're just printing trash, practically, right? Like they're just making more and more trash for landfills by not making something like this phone upgradable, by not making this something like this phone fixable. I think, and Josh put something on my radar tonight. We're going to get to it later in the episode, but I've heard of, like, I have looked up in the past, the upgradable phone. There are some product lines out there, and I'll probably do some Googling when Josh has a moment to talk, but there are product lines out there that are trying to get to this. They're not major, they're not getting attention, but the idea that you could replace the chip or fix the camera lens or swap the screen without needing like a master's of engineering degree, like that's what I'm getting to here. Instead of us putting out a million televisions that always just get thrown out, why can't we make a television that's upgradable? If the size is, if you just want the size, that doesn't have to change. But if something stops working in the back of it, like the light bulb or the sensor or this or that, the other thing, I do remember in college, okay, I think TVs and things used to be more upgradable. We had a roommate who trash picked a 64 inch.
Yeah, I forgot about this. Yeah, and it was like 64 inches. Yeah, it was absurd.
It was that wide, right? That was its diagonal, but it was one of those big back boys. Like it was hefty.
Well, it was a projector TV. You remember that? Like we're finally getting to a place where we can date ourselves a little bit, I think. But now it was old then when we got it too. It wasn't like brand new. But it was like a reverse projection TV. I had never seen one until that year when Wes, our roommate, found it. It was so big because it had a screen and then a projector in the back that was projecting on the screen. And like to us, we thought it was so cool because it was so big. Sorry, I'm diverging for just 1 second because people, you need to hear this story. It was we thought it was so cool because it was so big, but looking back, the brightness of this TV was so horrible because it was a projector that he had found in the trash, and bugs would get inside the TV and crawl on the lamp because it was warm. So sometimes you'd be watching like Lord of the Rings and a giant shadow of a stink bug would just like appear on the TV. It was the wildest thing. It was such a trash TV. Like it was.
I'm gonna try and find a picture because I feel like if people don't know, they need to know. But the biggest part about it, I found a picture. This is pretty close to what it was. It was bigger than this, but see if I can get this picture to load. The biggest thing about it was that Wes, it was broken. He fixed it.
Yeah,
so
I forgot about that.
It didn't have I forget what it didn't have. It didn't have the light bulb or something. Like it needed something.
Yeah, something was like I think it was missing a light bulb, and Wes got a replacement for that. But then there was something like bent inside of it that caused it not to work. Right. But Wes figured out if you just bent it slightly back, it would work. Like I forget exactly what it was, but Wes, because the TV was big enough to fit one of us in it. Like Wes was like in there. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't exactly the type of one we're talking about, but like I mean, the thing was huge.
Pretty close. Yeah, pretty close.
It was obnoxious. Anyway, So to your point though, Wes, our roommate, fixed it. Like he got it working, and we used it. Right now, that was a college scenario where like we had to imagine the amount of money we didn't realize we didn't have at that moment is a bit ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
um we had no money, so that worked, right? But I think what you're trying to get at, right? And this is a roastery episode. We haven't done this for a while, so just keep reiterating. This is kind of where Will and I just go on a tangent about a topic that we decide to talk about, and we have no real solid point, and we're not as positive as we normally are. And I
It
think
just
that's
gets
kind of
angsty.
yeah, that's the vibe the two of us are in tonight. Um, the the point I think you're getting at is that increasingly, I remember a time when tech was upgradable, but even fixable, right? Like your TV would go bad, you would fix your TV. You know, like your phone something would go bad on your phone, you'd fix it, right? The Xbox 360 would decide to red ring of death somewhere along the way. You either fixed it or you burned it. You know, there were two different ways to deal with that, but there was
Yeah.
a fixing solution, right?
Yeah.
Things didn't go right on your laptop, right? Like there was a brief period where we did upgrade, we fixed stuff, and even you could upgrade things and change things out. But I think the more and more we've moved to smaller devices, reproducible devices like the iPhone and the laptops we have today, I think are especially the two things I point to. I think the desktop world of gaming that Will and I live in is still upgradable and fixable just because of the type of people we're talking about. But like in general, TVs, all that stuff, something breaks, you usually don't end up fixing it. Or you don't even have the option, right? Like I remember, so two quick stories down here that I think validate what Will and I are talking about, right?
Are you about to talk
Um,
about the Mac, the iMac?
yes, well, yes, that was one of the
One of your
stories I was about to tell,
stories?
right? So
Yeah,
my
yeah,
wife, my
yeah.
wife had an iMac that she loved and she used to use for editing and stuff. It was a really great computer. Listen, I bash Apple all the time, but the iMac was a great computer. But here's why I
Yep.
bash Apple. This computer broke, and I forget what it was. Something not like massive, but something just wasn't working right. And I took it to a friend of mine who, worked in IT. He was, built computers, worked on network systems. Like he's very knowledgeable of a lot of different things in tech. And asked him to take a look at the computer. And he started to take a look at it and realized like he would have to like heat the screens to like get the computer to come apart because they had like glued it together so that like you
Yep.
couldn't get into it. And if he did that, he was going to immediately void any warranty we had on the computer to do anything.
Yep.
Right. And so what happened? That computer never got fixed. Like my wife just never got a new iMac because it was like impossible to fix the computer and get into
Yeah.
it and fix it. And that's not the first time I've had problems with Mac, right? Like the Sam broke a screen on a MacBook Pro that she had, right? And we got it fixed, but it cost us like an arm and a leg just to fix the screen. And there's no way that it's that
You may as
expensive
well
to
have
fix
just
the
bought
screen.
another computer.
Like it was
Yeah.
ridiculous, right? And that's not the only time we had those options. I mean, how many times Apple's been taken? This is fun tonight. I get to trash Apple like left and right, even though I have an
Yes.
iPhone. How many times has Apple been taken to task about the fact of like being proven to be setting up their iPhone system that older iPhones are just going to the wayside. So people are throwing them into the trash. So they have to buy the newest iPhone because of
Yep.
battery life, because of whatever, right? And I get like technology changing, outpacing, and needing to upgrade, right? But we've built a mechanism and a system in tech today that encourages waste. It encourages um, overspending on things that we don't need.
Yep.
Like if we're being like real honest with ourselves, how much different is my iPhone 15 than the 13 I got? Like it's not really that much different. Like the 16, we're all like, it's kind of sad. We're like
Yep.
sad human beings. We're like, oh my gosh, there's a camera button on the side of the iPhone 16. What?
Wait a second.
Like,
They added a button? It was all
I
about taking
know.
away the buttons
It was
back in the
wild.
day.
Anyway, like we've encouraged the system where it's just like the new best thing, and tech has built a system that requires people to waste, whether it's technology or money. And I think it's and Will and I both I think talk about this because it affects all of our areas of life, work, school, e-learning, like the amount of money that I've been in organizations that are being dropped on technology, whether it's subscriptions or tech, just because it's so hard to like when a laptop goes bad to like get that laptop fixed. It's more worth it just to get a new computer. Like my laptop right now, my battery's dead in it. It won't work. I don't know why. Just all of a sudden one day decided I don't like the electricity that you put inside of me. That's where I'm at, and I'm gonna have to buy a new laptop because there's no easy way for me to just like open this laptop up and change out a battery or do an upgrade. Like it's built at a level that makes it difficult to do that type of stuff. Yeah.
And at the same time, continuing the Apple bashing because this is fun. My brother-in-law is about to have to get a new iPhone. When I say this, there are probably some folks who listening may be appalled, but he is still using an iPhone XR. That released in Q4 of 2019. His phone is 5 years old. Actually 5 years old.
An iPhone XR? What the heck is an XR? That's
exactly.
not a number.
Exactly. It was 10. It was iPhone. It was the 10.
Oh, the 10. Okay, yeah.
But it was the XR was like I don't even know. I don't
was
care.
A special one?
Because Apple. But like he doesn't want to upgrade. He doesn't need to upgrade except that his battery's going. Okay, so he needs a new battery and the charging port is going. Like not only does he need he's just done. He can't use the phone anymore. And he's limping along until he gets the new one in or whatever like that. But like he's the kind of guy who could, like you're just saying about your laptop, keep using that XR. He doesn't care. He doesn't want the camera button. He doesn't need the 16. He just needs the battery. He needs it to actually work, and it doesn't. So his only choice is to throw that one in a landfill and probably trade it into the company. Who knows what they're doing with that stuff? I'm hoping they've got better ESG models today where that old tech is getting reused in some capacity.
Some companies are doing that. To be fair, they're taking trade-ins and it's getting recycled. And like I'm not saying all companies aren't doing that, but I also think we're still paying an arm and a leg to get them to the point that they recycle the phone. You know what I mean? I think it's like there's two things I'm complaining about. Like, yes, the eco part of it, but also just like the mechanism that we've created that is just like causing people to drop money, in my opinion, unnecessarily on technology. Both from organizations and individuals, I think, are having to drop money on tech that's just not necessary.
In my day job, I've now received 3 different laptops because of issues, right? And so when the first one happened, I was like, hey, this specific thing is happening. Can we address this? We'll just send you a new one. Well, but so that laptop goes back to office and it does get flashed and it can get recycled into their own system. But like the problem was never fixed. And who knows, was it hardware or software, right? So you don't know because they just wiped the operating system, set it with a clean image and prepare it for the next person to complain about something to send that one out as a refurbished in-house unit out. So they can kind of keep cycling these, but that then happened to me 3 times with the same problem, 3 different laptops. It's like what we get lost in this option of like fixing something. Instead, we put crap back into the cycle, and it just doesn't help anybody. The other element to this is like while we're talking hardware, we've all related to this. No phone lasts like a Nokia, right? The old days of Nokias, they're like built. At least they're built to last. You may not have been able to upgrade them, but they
not true. I had a track phone that was not Nokia. You've heard the story before, but I had a track phone that was not Nokia, and it was built to last like that one. I'm pretty sure that phone somewhere is still doing something. I don't know what. For context, listener, I in high school had a track phone. This is a small divergence again, but you know what? It's a roastery, so we can do whatever the heck we want. I had a track phone in high school that my dad told me, and this was his mistake because I was a high schooler. or late high school, because I think I was still in the band at that point. I was in Skyhawk Drive, and he told me if the phone broke, I could get a new phone. Now, what that communicates from a parent is you're going to have this phone until it no longer works, son. What that communicates to a teenager is a challenge. Okay, I'll break it. And I put it in water. I played badminton with it. What else did I do? We threw it down a flight of concrete stairs.
Sure.
It was 12 stairs. There are a few other things we did to it, and that phone still did not die. It's somewhere still, doing T9 texting and trying to get its minutes.
Take me back to T9.
I shouldn't have mentioned that. I know that's a sensitive topic for you.
The only thing that ever stopped me, another left. It's bunny trails everywhere. I still use T9 texting probably until like 3 or 4 years ago. Like I would have to download keyboards onto my phone so I could do T9 on smart folks on smartphones. I was doing this with like the Google Pixel 2 and the Google Pixel 3. I was still downloading it. Once they released swipe gestures on keyboards, I finally retired the T9.
You finally left the thing that all of us were trying to get away. It's whatever. It's fine. The keyboard has just been the universally accepted way to type in digitally. But you're right. T9 was so superior.
Better.
Anyway, all of this aside, right? Like we've built a mechanism that encourages, I think, waste, encourages in tech just going to the next big thing and kind of trashing the whole thing. When it's time to go to the next big thing, instead of, I think, iterating and building upon what you're doing. And so, okay, Will and I have complained a lot about this, but I think a couple things, how kind of come back out of the darkness for a hot second and talk about how would we change what we do, Will. Let's pretend for a second, Will, that good old Silicon Valley has hit a has hit a roadblock, and they're like, who shall we talk to? I know, Will and Josh from the Hitech podcast. They must know how to fix all of this. How would they fix our waste? I think there's a couple thoughts I have on this. I'll throw out one to give you a little bit more time to think as I pose this large question, Will.
All right.
So a practical example of a company that has tried to, I think, combat this in some ways. They're not a tech. This is not the company you're thinking of, Will, that we're going to talk about later. I'm saving it. This is a company that we have come to love and adore. And if somebody from that company ever decides to come on this podcast, Will and I will probably have an aneurysm. But we've talked about them several times. 37 Signals, right? So 37 Signals, we've talked about them on this podcast. I get it. I'm a fanboy. It's fine. Whatever. They run a software called Basecamp. But before they ran Basecamp, they had a lot of different versions of Basecamp. Basecamp 3, 4, different versionings of the app. They had an earlier chat tool. For the life of me, I can't remember what it is right now. That was kind of the precursor to Basecamp. Honestly, I think it was a precursor to Slack. I think they kind of ran the gambit on it. I can't remember what it's called now. That's really going to bother me. So I'm gonna slowly Google it while I keep talking. You're looking it up. I think they still. Yeah. Anyway, so here's something I really like about 37 Signals. Beyond just that I'm a fanboy and I really like how they run their company and how they project manage, and I love Basecamp. They have this thing where they genuinely still support older versions of the software. Now they may not go and do a bunch of crazy upgrades to the older versions of the software, but they still maintain them so that people who buy them can still use them. So for instance, for a longest time, there was Basecamp 3, and they went to Basecamp 4, and all of us were on our edge of our seat for Basecamp 4, and by all of us, I mean all of us nerds with no life. And but when they went to Basecamp 4, everybody who had Basecamp 3 didn't have to change. They were able to stay on Basecamp 3. They still, even to this day, I think, support the first app they ever came out with. They don't, they're not changing it and upgrading it and stuff, but people can still use it. They still got support. They still got the servers up and running for it. They still do all the stuff they're supposed to be doing for it. This is an example of a company in tech who doesn't do waste at a little bit of a different level than I think what Will and I are talking about, which is kind of like they don't encourage this pursuit of having to upgrade to the next thing, of having to pay more money for the next thing. They give you a solution, they support it forever, basically, and I think it encourages. While if you want to change and you upgrade, you don't have to, right?
Yeah.
And they also grandfather in people when they decide to change pricing. So when they decided to change their user pricing, for the most part, they didn't impact old users. They allowed the previous users to be in here. And what I think is really helpful about this is, Will, how much money have we seen companies waste on freaking subscriptions to software? Yep. Because every year it's more and more money to do that subscription. And yet we got no new features, no new upgrades. It's just more expensive to do business. Like that's wasteful.
They just
it's
inflate
encouraging
prices to
waste.
inflate prices.
Yeah, I've seen people drop human beings from their price line before they'll drop a subscription to a software that they're paying for.
Ooh,
like,
snap.
I'm not sure that's the world I want to live in, to be honest.
Yep.
Like we can say that's a cost of doing business. We can say that's a thing, but like, I'm gonna call it out now. That's putting a tech over a person. And like, I get we have to make money, I get we have to be businesses, but I think there's a better way to do things than just doing that. So like, that's a company that I think encourages, and they're very passionate about small businesses, so that's part of why they do it. They're building a platform and a place for people to come where they're not going to be gouged for money every 5 seconds for the software that they're paying for. And I think that's a non-wasteful practice. So that was a long description of something. So Will, I'm expecting something even better because I gave you a lot of time to think.
Well, I'm gonna take it further, right? So the tool that you were thinking about was Campfire. That was their original chat tool. And in 2024, this year, 37 Signals launched an effort called once.com. And you can buy their primary products, Campfire, Writebook, and Once, one time. You can purchase. They've relaunched one-time purchases, so you don't have to get stuck in the SaaS cycle, right? The software as a service cycle. So Campfire is a chat tool that competes with functionally Slack. You could buy it one time for $299, and you're done. It will work. You can just set it up on your own server and run it.
I was gonna say, you set it up on your own server though, right? You have to put it up on
you have to host it. You have to upload it to your own website or something, right? So there's more effort involved, but if you can go through that initial upswing effort, you can run this $299 software for 2 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 10 years, as long as you want to. Like, I'm thinking of this, even like our co-working facility uses free Slack, and it has so many limitations. Campfire would be perfect for them if they got it uploaded and set up. Like, they pay once, they could have premier features. Like Slack deletes stuff after 30 days and all that. Whatever it is what it is. It's good to have a free tool, but I think something like Campfire would be great for this. The other element of this, though, that I was getting into while I was looking at this is, while I was finding Campfire for you, 37 Signals claims that since they've launched Slack once, 37 Signals, since they have launched once, has saved their company $1 million just in like kind of tightening up and doing what they're calling cloud repatriation of their own services. Like, by not having to host all of these things that might only be serving companies with 100 people or 30 people, like if they were cloud hosting that's a resource 37 Signals is spending. Those are servers, time, energy, money, staff that 37 Signals has to put together to support something that's ongoing like that. They are already saving themselves money. Not so they're going to be able to make money because they're going to sell a product still. That's great, but they're saving themselves money by not spending or wasting their time on efforts that, frankly, they don't need to. I could set up Campfire myself. I just need the right computer. I need to get a domain. Boom, I'm good to go. So it's really important, I think, to think about this. Yes, like we started this conversation very much so focusing on hardware, but this is a critical element of like modern computing and modern work. We all use software as a service to work, whether it's Microsoft 365 now, right? Outlook, OneDrive, blah, 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 or the Google Workspace suite, right? It's Google Mail and all that crap. You're on one of those two platforms primarily if you're in business today, even if you're an employee or on your own. And all of them are deeply trying to capture your money in that cycle that Josh is talking about. And if you, I am thankful, like for some of the ones I've paid for, I've only seen some increases up to $1, $2, $3 on an annual basis for personal stuff I do. But what's to stop them from making it $20? They do have the control. There's no room for me to kind of negotiate with Google about whether or not my YouTube premium can be cheaper. So I like to see people like 37 Signals advocating for more humane or human-centered tech, more, I think, sustainable practices over time. And that, like you kind of said, it doesn't have to be just about the ecosystem. I think that's good. It's good to save things for the ecosystem, for the world, but I like stuff that's just more sustainable to use altogether, that I don't have to be paying every year or two to upgrade or change or fix or whatever. And I don't know, I think it might be about time to reveal what we're thinking about or we're seeing in the market as fixes to this problem. I've got one primarily that we were talking about beforehand, but I'm going to put two on screen. And folks, this is not, they're not brand affiliates. We're not going to make $1 on this. We don't have either of these products. Neither of us have either of these products, but they're demonstrating that somebody's willing to, somebody's thinking of taking this problem on. So the first one is Framework. You're going to see that on the right-hand side here. The other one, and I've heard about this, I've known about this for a while, is called Fairphone. Fairphone's not as relevant. They are only international for the moment, but these are both very important lines of technology. I'm going to leave both up for a second, then we're going to focus on Framework. But the phone, we all have one. And the computer, we all have one, pretty much, right? And these are two devices that regularly just get thrown out. They can't get fixed. They can't get upgraded. So while Fairphone's not eligible for us in the States yet, whatever, I just want to put that on your radar, folks. If you're thinking about these kinds of things, consider looking for people like this who are making greener products, more sustainable products, whatever. These phones are upgradable. You can replace the battery. The tech is good quality. It is based on, maybe more sustainable practice of making it. But you can buy spare parts. You don't have to buy the iPhone 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 ad nauseum. You can buy one phone and fix the battery when that breaks. And if the screen breaks, fix that. And if suddenly the tech changes, like the biggest thing with a phone would be the cell towers, right? When we launched phones with 1G, 2G, 3G, 5, now we're 5G. Like there was some point where they stopped supporting phones that only did 2G. So you, at some point, if you have a phone that was on 2G, you had to buy a phone that was at least 3G capable. I don't know if Fairphone's that customizable, that fixable, but with technology like this, with products like this, you could do that. And if we don't have at least a Fairphone, if we don't have more competitors like Fairphone trying to break into that space where you can make the modular phone, we're not going to see this issue, this trend change. Google and Apple have the mainstay of phone technologies, and unless we see competitors come out and push them, or laws push them to be more like the Fairphone, it's not going to get there. Now, more importantly, this is what spawned this whole episode. Josh showed me this. He's like, "Oh, I'm thinking about." I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is literally the episode right here." I mean, we've talked for 30 minutes without even getting to this, but we all have computers, and I'm literally working on an issue with my PC. My tower isn't working, and I need to fix it. It's going to require parts in and out. I'm trying to get somebody else involved because I don't know how to fix it. I've probably had. I mean, you think about this yourself, Josh, because I'm going to come around to you. I think I've had at least 6 or 7 laptops in my life. And that's not including towers, like PC towers and stuff like that. Like if I think about the tower computers I've had, I've probably had 3. I've owned 3 towers, but I primarily have owned laptops. I'm putting around the 6 and 7 range. Do you have an idea of how many laptops you've owned?
So, yeah, I am actually less, I have to admit. I
Okay.
think I'm at 4, if
Okay.
I'm right. Like, so I got a laptop a lot later in life, probably a bit later than you did, Will. Well, okay,
Yeah.
maybe I'm at 6. It's tough to remember. There was a period in the Josh life where I only got refurbished Dell computers from my dad's work, and
Yes.
they all kind of looked the
Yes.
same. Like they had like
Freebies.
they had that weird like big latch on the front,
Yep. Yep.
and they were all very horrible. The first like real laptop I remember getting was in college, and it was like an HP. Like I remember I think a family member got it for me, thinking I'd love having a 17-inch screen on my laptop. In case you're curious, I didn't. It was too big. It defeated the purpose of having a laptop. Um,
Yeah.
and then I got that Lenovo. I've had Lenovo for quite a while. Since then, I
Yep.
got that gaming laptop in college. That worked pretty well, but again, like eventually something went wrong with it. It was like a fan stopped working, and
Yep.
instead of fixing that fan, I had to get a new computer.
Yep.
And so I ended up getting the computer I have now, which is Lenovo Yoga, which I really liked. Like I really like the computer. It's been a really good laptop, but the battery's now shot, and I don't know what to
Right.
do with it. So this
Right.
has spawned this conversation because another YouTuber we follow and look at got involved with Framework, and I've seen them for a little while and never really thought anything else about them. And then when I realized why I'm getting a new laptop, because of the battery issue, I was like, I think I'm going to look into these Framework guys a little bit more, because I knew that they were like an upgradable computer. Their
Hmm.
big thing is both the ecosystem for like actual Earth that we're in being recyclable and upgradable, but also for the daily user. It's interesting. The employees, I don't know where they all come from, but I know a handful of them come from some big computer companies, including Apple, which is kind of why I think their computer looks like a MacBook. Um, but
Yeah.
they basically came from this perspective because the big tech companies like Apple and things would say they can't create upgradable and computers that can be easily maintenance because you can't make it look cool and sleek and artful and also do
Yeah.
that. And so
Yeah.
some people left Apple, some other people left some other companies. They started Framework in trying to prove that you can do this. And they went around to a lot of. I know a little bit of background because I watched the YouTuber who originally reviewed him, Linus Tech, and now he sponsors, or not sponsors. He's invested in the company, and like they went around to like laptop or computer companies and basically said like, what is the stuff you like to make for
Yeah.
laptops? And they designed a system around that so that they could maintain it, right? And so that's kind of what they built their computers. And I'm sure there's a lot more that went into that. That's my layman's term description of what they did. But Will's looking at the screen right now. Like if you're just listening to audio, you can check out the video. Will's looking at some of their website. Like the computer Will's looking at, Will and I know enough about computers to know what's a decent computer. Like it's only like $1,000. Like I actually originally thought they were going to be way more expensive, and I started looking into how good they were, and like I mean, even $1,600 is not bad for a laptop. My Lenovo, I mean, you can get cheaper laptops. You can get $500, $600 laptops, but they're not going
Always.
to have
Yeah.
the hardware that this computer has. And the thing that's really cool is like I've seen video breakdowns of using this. I'll make sure to provide a link to this. I'm going to make a note.
Yeah.
Linus
A,
Tech
a point that I'll
breakdown.
make real quick while you're noting is that this extended pro, their most expensive one at 22,099, so $2,100. This laptop, their most expensive version of this 13-inch or whatever it is like $1,000 cheaper than the laptop I'm using right now. I hate to, like I don't like to throw money around, but like this laptop I'm using is pretty much those specs, actually a little less. and that is $1,000 cheaper. Like, that's amazing that you could even get like this $1,000 one. I would get this for my mom, and she would be happy for the rest of her life. This would do everything it needs, and if the battery died, I could replace the battery. Like, I'm actually already thinking that the next time my mom needs a computer, this is the computer I'm getting her, because then I'll be able to fix the darn thing, as opposed to what happened the last time I got my mom a computer. It broke. Oh, and I haven't been able to do anything with it because it broke.
Yeah.
So what do we do now? Buy her a new one. Like,
scan through the images real quick, Will. Does it show them with the computer open? I'm curious, just for listeners who are watching the video. I want to see if it just shows the laptop, or does it show like it open up at all? Looks like it just shows the laptop.
Kind of thing, the actual inside.
Yeah, I was curious. I'm looking for because I think this is kind of hard for people to visualize. So, okay, here we go. So, like, you're not going to know what all those listening and not watching the video, go check out the video again. You can see this. Like, they've literally built parts to be modular for people who don't know anything about laptops and computers. Now, granted, they have guides and stuff on how to do all this stuff. You're not going to be able to pick up a computer and do things, but hilariously, Will, they have a DIY version where you can order the computer not put together, and you have to put it together. I only found out recently that they put the whole computer together before you get it and then take it apart again so that you can put it together yourself, which I think is hilarious. But the point of all of this is if I had this, the reason I've been looking into this computer is if I had this computer, my battery goes bad, I can literally buy a replacement battery from them and put a new one in. You can literally change out screens, keyboards, and they're still building out their offerings of what they're able to provide. But to the point, I was surprised, they're not that expensive. The computer looks really nice. It's a good setup. This is another example of where they're building a framework, if you will, for how you could sustain both a business and have a kind of humane focus to your technology, right? Where this allows the consumer, allows us to easily upgrade things, and also allows the company to survive, because they build a model where once they build out what they're trying to do, you keep coming back to them for parts. What are you doing? And now, is that as lucrative as selling a new iPhone every quarter? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I don't know. That's where my business knowledge ends. But I can tell you, I think it's a better long-term system. And Will and I have been in schools. We have been in organizations where I see a ton of money just wasted on technology. I mean, I love technology, and this is where I think it circles back around for those of you listening to our podcast, whether you're working in learning and development, you're working at schools, you're a teacher, whatever it may be. I think we just need to start considering and taking a careful look at the ecosystem we're building in the tech world. And that's infiltrating every other place of work and business and school and learning, where we're in a place where inflation is pretty high. We've seen a lot of layoffs in the last couple of years, and it started to, at least for me, push a question of how careful are we actually being with the resources we've been given? And technology is a big part of that. And I think we're being pretty wasteful with how we're doing things. And a lot of the stuff where Will and I are talking about is out of the control of those of you listening. But if you are a teacher, you're developing courses, you're in learning and development, in some fashion, you're in a team organization who's got to use technology in some case. And I would just ask all of us, I think, to be considering, how much waste are we doing? And I think this can look a lot of different ways. It can be the computer we're buying. It can be a great example. Will and I have retold this story a bunch of times. They weren't paying money for all of them, but when I first came into the team I was in before, they had and Will had left this team. They had what was it, 100 external tools in their courses or something. It was wild. Yeah. And there were double ups. They had multiple tools that they were using that did whiteboarding, and did a bunch of stuff. It can be stuff like that. I mean, how many companies have multiple tools that do the same thing? And you as a teacher, how much money is going into the tech that you're using, and what you're doing?
Teachers wrestle with the iPad and the Chromebook issue, right?
Yeah.
The Chromebooks were literally built to expire. So all these districts got tons of free or cheap Chromebooks. They're everywhere. They get integrated. They're in the ecosystem, blah,
Oh
blah,
yeah, they're
blah.
all.
And then the hardware was given an expiration date on the operating systems. So it's not like the hardware is going to stop working. It was going to stop working with the operating system. The operating system was designed to expire. So, like, that's something where absolutely folks in education can and should be advocating for better practices. Like, frankly, this is a roastery. I'm just gonna say it. Don't buy the Chromebooks. Like it's not good. They're not gonna work. They're not sustainable long term. I know it gets us something done today. It's a band-aid approach, but we need to look for fair phones. We need to look for frameworks where these kinds of products exist that we could bring into schools and be able to maintain them over time. Like there's nothing wrong with buying a new book when an old book is tattered and ratty and pages are missing. But there is something wrong with making tech like Chromebooks to fail, making phones like iPhones to fail, building washers and dryers and things with technology and tools and pieces that are plastic and are going to break because the whole overall process of a washer is repetitive, long-term, high-impact motion. And if you use plastic, it will break. Plastic cannot stand the test of time. So Ah,
Yeah,
this was an
this
easy
was.
episode. It wasn't even hard to get this far into things.
It was an interesting trade. This is how roasteries go. A year from now, Will and I may have different takes on stuff we've said during this episode, but we've undone our ties. We've sat by the fire. More specifically, I've sat by a very confusing dinette in my hotel, and we've talked about these pieces. So, some of you, this may not be an enjoyable conversation for you, and that's great. You can tune into the next episode, but I think it's just a thing that we want to consider. I will say we have a series coming up in Hitech. Not this season, right? This episode we're recording is not a part of the new season yet. I don't think. Maybe it is.
That's correct.
Is
We are
it?
recording the last episode of season 7, actually. Season 8 starts in episode
Yes.
168.
Good. Look at us. Season 8 starts next week. So those of you listening, we're gonna be starting season 8 of the Hitech podcast. And we have some really fun stuff planned, some holiday themed episodes we've not done before. But one thing we're gonna be sitting in for a little while is a series that for right now has been termed Human Tech. And I think that's probably gonna hold on till the series. But we want to talk about how we evaluate and come to tech with a human perspective, how we don't lose sight of the technology. I think we're entering an interesting time where technology is becoming very pervasive in our world, and I think we can often forget about how to use technology well, how to use technology humanely, and we can lose sight of what we're supposed to be using it for. So the Human Tech series, we're going to be talking a bit about that on this season, and we'll get more to that. So some of these conversations are probably going to be coming back as we look at it, and we'll see in that series. Did Will and I buy a framework laptop? I don't know. We'll see. These will be great little tidbits that we'll learn in the future. I don't know. It'll be a great time. But with that said, it's time to put the ties back on. It's time to step away from the fireplace for a little while without choking yourself, Will. Don't do that. Next week on the Hitech podcast, hopefully, no, not hopefully, we know it's coming. We are going to be joined by a friend of ours, Brian, from Hacks, who is coming to kind of talk through his website. It's funny. We didn't plan this, but some of the spiels we got on this episode, Brian would very much support.
Absolutely.
Brian kind of comes from a perspective of the internet also has this problem of honestly wastefulness, and that people should be able to get content on the internet easily, and right now we don't have that. And so he's going to talk to us about Hacks, the platform he has created that kind of allows people to create content instantly on the internet and be very shareable. That's all I can tell you at this point because it's so hard to describe what happens in this episode, but all I can tell you is it's amazing. Specifically, if you're in instructional design or developing online content and courses, you will want to make sure that you check this episode out. Brian's going to be introducing a topic that I've looked into a little bit called headless authoring, which is this idea about being able to come in and kind of develop out something, an experience, by just typing in information without having to know a whole bunch about HTML and code, and actually see the experience get built out in front of you. It's something that's been a dream of mine to see, and Brian actually has a way to do it, and it's incredibly awesome. So you will want to check out that episode next week on 168 as we talk to Brian Olendike from Hacks, and he shows us some of the crazy stuff that he's been doing and his website he made in the 90s. It's a wild ride, folks. You want to check out that episode next week. Again, just a reminder, you can find us on the socials at Hitech Podcast. Make sure to follow us, like, subscribe, check us out on Spotify and YouTube. It really helps us out if you do that. We like to know that you're alive out there. Also, you can hit us up at inbox@hitechpod.us if you would like to reach out to us. You want to be on the podcast, you have a topic idea, you disagree with us, you think wasteful technology is great, and we're a bunch of idiots. You can tell us that at inbox@hitechpod.us. And also a reminder, we have a website. We're on the internet, hitechpod.us. We did it. We've had it for a while. Just go check out the website. There's episode pages. It's great. All right, folks. It's time to wrap on another week. Empowering minds.
Embracing tech.
Cheers.
Cheers.